call to order this hearing for the PPS Board of Education. Thank you all for your patience. I know we're starting a little bit late. My board colleagues, Chair Constam and Director Bailey, were in a 2-hour meeting before this upstairs, and so we gave them a little time to get settled before we began.
Thank you.
So we are here gathered to hear from Kairos PDX and from Portland Village School, and we will begin by welcoming Kairos PDX, unless you have something for us first.
We just do the introduction.
Great.
All right. So good evening. I'm Karina Wolf, the Area Senior Director of Multiple Pathways to Graduation. And just some basic introduction of the item. So Kairos PDX Academic Public Charter School submitted a written request for charter renewal on January 2nd, 2020 in accordance with the charter school renewal process outlined in ORS 338.065. Per statute, the next step in that process, and our purpose here today, states that, quote, within 45 days after receiving a written renewal request from a public charter school governing body, the sponsor shall hold a public hearing regarding the request for renewal. At this point, I'll ask Tara O'Neill, our Director of Charter Schools, to share some school-specific information.
Good evening. Kairos PDX is a K-5 charter school currently operating in the PPS Humboldt Elementary School building in North Portland. Kairos currently enrolls 204 students with a growing student population as their lead full class ages into the upper grades. Kairos' current contract includes an enrollment capacity of 244 students. District sponsors of charter schools in Oregon are responsible for evaluating charter school performance and determining whether or not to renew the contract of a charter school based on its compliance with the law and the contract with its sponsor. As a member district of the National Association of Charter School Authorizers, PPS requires charter schools to use the recommended renewal application to ensure a fair and transparent process for schools undergoing renewal, and to ensure that the renewal decision is based on criteria specified in statute. Evaluation for renewal includes a review of annual performance reports, financial audits, site visits, and any other information jointly agreed upon by the sponsor and the charter school. This information is formally collected in the school's annual performance framework and report. Because Kairos has been growing by 1 grade per year, the school has only 2 years of state assessment data reported. The results on state assessments have not been consistent, in part due to the small student population in grades 3 through 5. More data is needed, both longitudinal over time as well as within sample size within a year, before we can assess trends for student achievement data. The board committee has been provided with copies of the Kairos renewal application, the 2018-19 Oregon report card, and the 18-19 annual performance framework and report, which includes analysis of student achievement data to date. In addition, over the course of the last charter term, the school has exhibited financial sustainability and consistently meets both financial and organizational standards on its performance frameworks. Kairos opened in 2014 and is in its 6th year of operation and completed its first charter renewal in 2017. This is Kairos' 2nd charter renewal, and per statute, the first renewal of a charter shall be for the same time period as the initial charter, and subsequent renewals of a charter shall be for a minimum of 5 years, but may not exceed 10 years. Kairos PDX has requested a full 10-year renewal of its charter. Additionally, as part of its renewal application, Kairos has asked that the district use an equity lens to consider passing through more than the statutory minimum of 80% of the charter school rate and increase this pass-through amount to 95%. Kairos has also asked for an increase in its enrollment capacity from 244 to 255. And at this time, I'll ask the Kairos representatives to come up.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Marshall Goss Jr. Thank you for having us. Sorry, just catching my breath. There's a lot going on at the Motor Center and things of that nature. Concert and whatnot. What we have posted is where we've been. In 1980, Portland was amounted to mandatory busing to improve the racial balance of public schools. Black children were adversely impacted by this. Mr. Ron Hurton and members of the Black United Front worked to stop busing, instead insisted that black children have an option in their neighborhood where they could thrive. But in 2000, the Oregonian reported that Ron Hurton arranged a mock casket demonstration in front of the Portland School Board and orchestrated demonstrators shouting, "We are all fired up. Can't take it no more. No more promises, no more lies." The mock coffin symbolized the death sentence Portland Public Schools handed to low-income and minority students because of the achievement gaps between them and white students in reading, math, and writing. And understand this, folks. PPS made a commitment, not only to the black students, but everyone in this community, to have options where black children could thrive. They shouldn't have to go far to find them. Fast forward, and we've lost options that black children and families actually choose. In the entire portfolio of schools that PPS offer, this includes magnet, focus options, and language immersion schools. Kairos PDX is the only, I'll back up. Kairos PDX is the only school that black families are choosing. Why? Because they see that their children can thrive. We want children to thrive in all schools, and Kairos can be part of that solution. But the investment in the current options matter. Fast forwarding that, and Portland Public Schools was recently named as being in the top 10 of largest achievement gaps in the nation. With that said, we asked our students, and I'm a parent of Kairos PDX, and explaining these discrepancies to my daughter and asking her to put her best foot forward means that in this moment she has to ask to be herself because of the gaps in finances and opportunities. And as a parent, I have to explain that to my children day in and day out. Although my teenager does not attend Kairos, she is a regular and consistent volunteer, an ambassador to Kairos, because she sees the value in being a part of that system for her sister. We just need you to listen and act. Thank you.
So we think about the opportunities that have been here and present in our community to invest. And what we have discovered is that there are many people who've recognized Kairos' contribution to community and the impact that we are having right now in real time in community. We're honored to be doing this work on behalf of PPS students. We're honored to be doing this work in the North Portland neighborhood where we reside. We've also been blessed to have our students highlighted in multiple ways, including in the New York Times and the Seattle Times. These articles showcase innovative practices that support the whole child, socially, emotionally, culturally, academically. At Kairos, loving students requires that we ground our school culture in the disciplines of wellness that start with belonging. And what we also know is that too many children do not feel this basic sense of belonging at school, a sense of belonging that's foundational to health, let alone achievement. But Kairos is working to be a solution to that problem. We're innovating, keeping our culture of love and belonging as the most important thing. often students can tell you if they've heard me talk, the most important thing is how we treat each other. Period, on the end. We talk a lot about Kairos love. We say Kairos love is care plus commitment. I care about you too much to harm you with my words or my body, therefore I will do my work to ensure I can care for you well. And I'm committed to your long-term success. I am there and I'm with you. And that Kairos love framework undergirds every single thing that we do. We are innovators, and that innovation requires collaboration. So we collaborate student to teacher, we co-create curriculum in classroom environments, we collaborate staff to staff, encouraging teacher leadership, highlighting excellence within, making sure there's time for teachers to collaborate, creating structures around that. We believe that school to family is hugely important and have from the beginning had not only an FTE designed specifically to make sure that we're meeting families' needs, but we've designed multiple different kinds of opportunities for families to come into the school, not only for conferences, but for themselves to get to know each other. We believe in the partnerships in school to community. We've had untold numbers of volunteers come through the SMART program, different business owners in the community, seeing that although once undervalued, students at Kairos are actually our best resource for a profitable future and have partnered in that way in profound ways with us. One example of what student-teacher partnership looks like, we recently had our alumni, we had 5 graduates last year. So we're able to have 4 of those 5 come back to Kairos. And I asked them, okay, so what is it that you hope will never change about Kairos? And like in one voice almost, they said how much the teachers care. The teachers at Kairos care so much more, they said. They'll help you get your work done, and they connect to you on an emotional level, and it shows how much they care. Innovation also takes reflection. The only way that we actually change is to stop and notice and reflect to make an intentional, different decision. We believe in that for staff. We believe in building a habit of reflection, the self-reflection that forces us to interrupt our processes and examine them. Because if we don't, we're going to continue to recreate the same biases and the same structures that have been in existence in education since its inception. We're different on purpose, and reflection helps keep it so. We believe that for children, we believe that building that reflective practice for children allows us to address big emotions and behaviors that are important for children to be able to process and learn from so they can grow and thrive. We've built structures like the reflection room that utilizes relationships and mindful practice as tools for transformation, the kind of transformation we know our students can take with them far beyond our doors in our work. Innovation requires time and investment. We have invested over 448 hours of professional development time over our 6 years, where we examine how race and privilege and power impact us as people. We spend money and time on our staff for a reason. We're different on purpose, and that requires something of us, which is why investment in retention of those incredible staff is so important. We have dedicated to an additional 100 hours of school per year, which is also a cost, but it's a cost that's intentional because we know that if we can reduce that amount of time and that gap in the summer, we give our students their best opportunity to hold on to what they know. We've crafted and put together 52 hours of Community Action Friday partnership work, which ensure opportunities from robotics to clay for our young people. They give our future leaders the foundation to let their interests fly, the kind of interest that too often children only get if their families can take them here and afford this and know this. That time and partnership also provides protected time for teachers to collaborate in their teams toward education success for all. We've taken time for data analysis Time allowing us to make informed decisions, being that innovation, being that learning laboratory that we are designed to be, ensuring students are receiving what they need in real time, focused and targeted innovation. All of these, collaboration, self-reflection, and intentional time, require investment, meaningful and impactful and sustaining investments. But why? Because the future is bright. You'll see a slide of one of our kindergarten classrooms. If you look carefully, there are many of them in fabrics and different things, because they were in the midst and continue to be in the midst of a study of African kingdoms. Because kindergartners are often interested in kings and queens and princesses and princes. But we want to broaden that schema, right? We want to give them a sense that is larger than what dominant culture would, of what that means. We're also really serious about making sure that they have access to all of those basic skills and that they're staying with their peers across the nation, if not moving faster. So we conduct, as you know, the MAP assessment for primary grades to track that. So this kindergarten classroom not only gets to study African kingdoms, they just completed their MAP assessment. And typical growth would be 100%. That's the way that the system is organized. In math, this classroom is showing already halfway through the year, they're at 117% of growth. For math, they're at 100 and, yeah. They're at 129% growth for reading. But then we're often asked, well, okay, what happens when your students leave you? So on the other side, you'll see our robust group of 5 graduating 5th graders. So in the course of the conversation when they were there, they're only 5, but they're at 4 different schools: Fabian, Ockley, Green, Cesar Chavez, and Vernon. And when I asked them, we had a whole bunch of time to have conversation. I said, okay, finish this sentence for me. You've now looked, you've seen a lot of different children coming from a lot of different places. Because I came from Kairos, finish that for me. This is what they said. Because I came from Kairos, I have empathy and I feel for other people. Because I came from Kairos, I care about my learning. Because I came from Kairos, I care about my grades. Because I came from Kairos, I am kind. Because I came from Kairos, I am low-key the kindest kid in my class. Because I came from Kairos, I stand up to the bullies. I have friends because I went to Kairos. There is emerging evidence that Kairos is an effective innovation. Proper investment is not only appropriate, but essential to meeting the long-term equity goals of this district.
So we have 10 minutes allotted for your presentation time, and we're right now at 13. So I know you've got some more to say, but if you could, quickly, be succinct and get us through it, I'd really appreciate that, because we've got
I'm Marsha Williams. I'm one of the
before us.
co-founders of Kairos, and they've actually laid it out, because my busy slide, which she's going to move to, is really just to lay out what we're asking for, which is the investment. And our ask really is that a public school be publicly funded, majority publicly funded. And we're really asking that you look at the public dollars that are received on a per student basis. As you know, the state sets the floor. We're just asking you to come a little higher up to the ceiling with us. The first row shows the 80%, and that's where we are. And the last row shows 97% is the average. So on average, most sponsors of charter schools are taking about 3% admin rate. And so the red is what we're asking for. We're asking for the 5%. That's where high schools currently are. And we recognize that before you right now is an opportunity, as we are renewing our charter, for you to really think about what it means to partner with us and really invest in Kairos and the future that Zalika just shared with you, that we believe is really bright for this district. One more slide. I'm just going to lay out the ask as plain as day. I do just want to highlight, we're focused on revenue, but there are some key expenses that, we recognize when we decided to become a charter that there are certain things that don't come with that, like facilities. But we are paying rent and maintenance costs around $1,300 per pupil. That's an expense that we have. We did make the intentional decision to be extended year, so we're averaging about 20 more days of school per year. And then just the PIRS, when you look at, for example, a starting teacher with a master's at 51,733, that's PPS's starting rate. We would be paying $13,751 in PIRS for a year. And one of the things when we think about investment, it's really how are we going to make this sustainable? And being able to raise our bar, raise our salaries so that we can bring in teachers and allow for Kairos to be sustainable is one of the things that we're asking for. So this ask that we have before you again is really about us believing that you do believe that this is a bright future for this district, and the leaders that are going to come out of Kairos are just going to even make this district even stronger than what it is already. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we now have a 10-minute time period for Kairos supporters to speak, and you can use that time period as you'd like. After the 10-minute time period, we will have an opportunity for any folks in opposition to speak, and then we will have a 30-minute question and answer period with the board. It's probably not. We can ask for that. Make a note of your questions. And I invite you to please state your name for the record and to share with us your stories. Thank you for being here.
Also, there's a sign-in sheet on the table there. If you'll write your name down, that would be great. Thank you.
Hi. My name is Gigi. Because I'm a great-grandparent. And I am so blessed to tell you why it's important about our babies. My great-grandson, he's given academic energy, and he's very enthusiastic. He is super affirmed. He sees women like myself when he goes to school, taking leadership in the school he attends. He's given the capacity to be empowered, to make good decisions, and as the school says, and be awesome and amazing. He is seen. He is seen. Black kids, they matter, and we cannot take any risks, because the stakes are so high, and we have so much to lose. Will you invest in Kairos? Not because I mentioned my great-grandson, because of all these kids you see, because we value them, because we care about them. I have seen so many things go and come, because things that work, they are not supported. And enough is enough. Again, will you support our babies and the Kairos kids? Black kids matter. Thank you kindly.
Hi, good evening. My name's Talisa Timms. And as you know, children learn best when they see themselves in their learning, when they have representation and connection to the things that they're learning. A child's light illuminates when their brilliance and intellectual capabilities are intentionally affirmed and reaffirmed, as we heard, through their curriculum and materials. Children thrive when they have confidence in themselves and when they feel that their community also has confidence in them too. Culturally responsive practice builds leaders who are grounded in their values, leaders who know the stories of their people and they are rooted in who they are. Culturally responsive practice instills the concepts of acceptance, inclusion, and like Ms. Alika talked about, care. Invest in culturally responsive education that comes not from theories, textbooks, or trends, but from the lived experiences and interweavings of real people, real teachers, real people of color. We've got to stop causing harm to our Black children. Invest in Kairos because Black kids matter. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. I'm Jessie Irvin-Stramick. I want to speak on behalf of the experience of an educator at Kairos. I've been teaching for 10 years. I was born and raised in Portland, went to Portland Public Schools. I want to just recognize my 5th grade teacher, Mr. Speed, at John Ball Elementary School. I am here because he was so instrumental. He was that one adult, I just was hearing that on the radio again today, that it takes that one adult to just shine their light into your life and let you see what is possible. And I feel so incredibly fortunate to go to a school where being that adult is at the very foundation of who we are. And then also instilling in our children that they will then be that adult for others. This is a generational impact, I think, that we have in investing in Kairos. The teachers at Kairos are asked to do some very audacious things. We are asked to unpack our own identities, regardless of the skin that we're in. We are asked as white educators to really recognize that white supremacy is very much at the core of what is wrong in education and very much at the core of what we have to dismantle. We do that work every day when we walk into that building. And an investment in Kairos would just continue to keep that retention in the work, because we know that 1 year isn't enough. We know that 2 years isn't enough. We know that 3 years isn't enough. This is going to be work that has to happen over time. I've been very fortunate to be there 4 years, and I feel like I have just scratched the surface of what it truly means to be a teacher fighting for racial justice. I was taught in a progressive graduate program that I was not to tell the kids that I worked with that I loved them. And let me tell you, those babies at that school know through and through that Miss Jessie loves them. And that Kairos is the place that made that known to me, that that is what's important. I think that we have an incredible opportunity here for educators like me who want to continue this work year after year after year after year. And that we want to raise the next generation of people that are going to invest in Portland and making it a better place.
Hi. Hello. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today about Kairos. My name is Tiffany Penson, and I'm a proud vice chair of the Kairos board. Imagine if the words diversity, equity, inclusion really had meaning behind them and not used to just check a box or insert it in a strategic plan that sits on the shelf and never revisit it. You're probably thinking, oh, PPS has an equity officer. We look at the work we do using an equity lens. We have courageous conversations, and the list goes on. However, PPS still has Black and brown youth failing and being disciplined at a rate higher than white students, along with other disparities. Now imagine if PPS decided to actually focus on the success of Black students, righting the wrongs of the past and truly supporting a successful pathway for our students to turn negative data into positive data. Kairos has the expertise to help PPS with this heavy lift, and in a culturally specific way, which has and is still currently missing from the district. For you to keep thinking that the district can do it on their own is showing an arrogance, and we know what's best for you people attitude that has been plaguing our community before I was born and continues to do so, causing generations of unreconcilable damage. Another form of keeping us enslaved to a system that is failing us. If the district supports Kairos, it is only a win for all of us, especially the students. We are not adversaries, but collaborators wanting the success for our students. The time is now to work together to do what is right and truly make a tangible difference and break the cycle. This is an opportunity to set your table how you want to be remembered as a board. You can either be on the right side of change or continue to carry the mantle designed to keep one group of people down while elevating another group. You know there is a name for that behavior, and we all know what that is. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Carol Davis. I am the office coordinator for Kairos PDX, and I'm so proud to be that. Today I'm represented as a mother, I'm represented as a grandmother, I'm represented as a wife, I'm represented as a daughter. I've lived in the Portland area going back and forth for over 50 years now. I've seen transformation, but today I come to speak from my heart, and all I can do is speak from my heart. Being at Kairos, my grandchildren, I have 3 grandchildren that started out at Kairos. 2 of those children have moved on to Sacramento, California, and they talk often of Kairos. I have one of my grandchildren child that had started at Kairos and then later on moved to another school in the Oregon area. After being at that school, had a difficult time because that child, my grandchild, was seen to be as a target. He felt like he was always going to be in trouble. Every time he went to approach the teacher, he felt like he was going to get in trouble. So we decided to transfer him back to Kairos. Since he's been back at Kairos, I am proud to say that my grandson has increased in his math. I am so proud of his teacher. He has increased in his math, but most of all, he's learned how to process. And I think that's very important. He's learned how to process his attitude. He's learned how to have the motivation that he can make it. We've all spoke today. We've all heard words today, but I want to say a couple of key words that you've heard today. Identification, beneficial, cultivating, partnership, increase, collaboration, communication, cooperation. You've heard testimonies, coordinating, progress, engaging. We are an awesome school. We engage with our families, we engage with our students, and we engage with our staff. So please consider what we've spoken on today and keep us in mind when you go to think about what needs to be changed. Kairos is important.
Thank you for your testimony. Ms. Bradshaw, do we have any testimony in opposition? Now that she knows of, is there anyone here to testify in opposition of Kairos' renewal? Okay. We will now move into, people are walking and I can't tell if they're coming up. Nope, sitting, great. We are going to now move into a time of asking some questions from the board for Kairos. So if there's any folks who want to take responsibility for answering those questions, if you want to come down to the front to the microphones. Thank you. All right, I'll start. We're negotiating here how to do this since my board colleagues were in a meeting and we didn't have time to ask who was asking what before we got here. But I wanted to start off with sort of a larger question, which is describe some of the major events that have taken place over the term of the recent contract, and how would you categorize the past 3 years of life at Kairos?
Okay, well, I'll start. We moved into a new building, which was huge for us. We grew from 85 to over 200 plus students, also huge. And in terms of the way I would characterize it, the last 3 years was the transition between sort of the beginning. We used to have sort of a common phrase, we were flying the plane while we were building it, right, in the beginning. There were few people doing multiple, jobs. You just sort of did what you need to do. And then the last 3 have been the process of creating more structures and sort of, okay, we got the plane now, right? So now we can really think strategically about how to moving into a sustainable airspace, if you will.
I think the last 3 years was the best of times and the worst of times, and I think Salika highlighted well the good. We saw growth. We saw, I think, increased synergy with children, with staff, all the pieces starting to work together, as Salika articulated. I will be honest, I think there were a lot of challenges with our partnership with PPS. Obviously, we had to fight for our building. We started in this space. We asked for the building many years, but when we started, we had wires ripped out and things happening. It was a very unpleasant experience, particularly because of the history of that space and that building, what is happening in the albino community, and the removal of us and the sort of desire to remove us had an adverse impact on our staff and our children. And people felt like they didn't matter. And that's why we were wearing shirts that say we matter, because it's indicative of what we've seen before in Portland. So not all of you were here at the start of those 3 years. And I don't say that to point fingers, but to be honest, I think we entered in hoping for a relationship and partnership with PPS. And that has been something that has been hard to come by. And for me, that has been a big stress in figuring out, because I think we exist solely because there is an achievement gap in Portland Public Schools. We exist because we believe that Black children deserve an option where they can truly be seen and thrive. We are not here for kicks. We are not here because we're not even here because we're super pro-charter. We just believe that children deserve an option where they can see themselves and be themselves and do well. And we are trying to be part of. We're trying to be part of the solution, and so we really want to partner with you to be part of the solution for this community.
I know you've asked for a 10-year renewal, and what would it mean for Kairos if there was that option was decided and we gave you a 10-year renewal?
I think, as Kylie was just highlighting, for us, the biggest piece is probably around facilities, because as I highlighted in my slide, we are responsible for facilities, and as a result, having a contract that has that length and term is going to make it easier for us in terms of navigating the space of trying to find our next home. And displacement was, as Kali highlighted, really difficult on our community. And if we can mitigate that by having the 10-year lease, knowing that moving forward that would be beneficial for us, it would mean a lot.
You just said 10-year lease, but I think you mean
10-year renewal.
I think that was a Freudian slip.
Yes, sorry.
And is your ultimate hope to stay in the Humboldt building, or do you want to acquire something else? Like, what would your vision be if you got to be queen of the world?
Well, I think the
she is queen of the world.
You don't really want to know that, but no, I think so. To be transparent, we came before the board, and we have been actively. I mean, we as our facility subcommittee has been actively looking for spaces. We have a couple of opportunities that we're exploring now, but our goal really is we would love to have our own space. We would love to be able to have the freedom and just removing that fear of displacement. It's a very real thing for our families and for our staff, and so our ability to mitigate that is definitely what we want.
And I see your sisters at Portland Village School nodding their heads as you're speaking there about that.
I had a specific question. One, Marsha, can you give us a copy of that slide that you had up that had your that was your funding slide?
Yeah.
Because I don't think that's in your proposal.
Okay.
So when you wrote this proposal, the equity dollars had not flowed through to you, and I still am a little bit unclear as to what happened there, but were you guys made whole for the period, were our charters in general made whole for the lag in that, and then also specifically for Kairos, how much was that? How much is that annually for you?
Yeah, so
Was it
this year it's about 100,000.
Okay.
And yes, Tara ensured that we are getting that, and we're getting it in one lump sum, which is really great.
Could you go back to the funding slide just for us as we're talking money? It'd be helpful.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So you got, so on that, okay. Math. Great. Yes. Okay.
So the equity dollars are not represented here. This is, I'm just looking at the general purpose grant of $8,308.
Where would the equity dollars put you in terms of
The equity dollars are not tied to the state. This is the general purpose grant that comes straight through from the state. The equity dollars is tied to the district. So they're not the same. I didn't represent. I was just focused on ODE.
I think we talked about this at our work session, that it was like $250 per student.
Yeah.
It wasn't.
Oh, correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was, so it would increase the per student to like, again, math, 6,900. Where's my math teacher? Am I good? Yeah. Okay.
And just in looking at the underlying philosophy of the state, we know that our state is one of the least charter friendly in the country. But when that 80-20 split was created by the state, what are the services that you received direct from the district, other than special education services and administrative support through the renewal process and all of that?
I mean, I do not want to underscore the administrative support we receive from the charter office. They are amazing.
Yeah.
Both Jenny and Tara. Can we seriously? I mean, seriously, that it is huge. I mean, just in terms of navigating. When you talk about, like Zalika was saying, like building the plane while you're flying it, that's what we were doing. There's so many pieces, and from the beginning, the charter office has been very supportive in that piece. Outside of that, I think the charter office has done more to try to make some of the resources that the district has available to us. Some of the trainings for educators, we've now, over the years, have started to get more access and exposure to, and opportunity to access some of those, which has been beneficial.
But it wasn't that way. So the charter office has evolved, I just want to say. From when we started our charter, it was not the same charter office, although Karina has been amazing as the person overseeing Ed Options. Mm-hmm. The charter office was not as helpful in the beginning until Tara was hired. I'm going to be very honest with you. So there has been I'm putting that on the record. Yeah. There has been a change. But that is all, in terms of SPED and Tara and Jenny, that is all we've had. And so there hasn't been a lot of extra things that I think require the 20%. And what's very interesting to me is the state pass-through is automatically 10% higher. So as a baseline, the state is passing through to the state-sponsored charters 10% more than PPS is. There are districts within Portland, we have been told, that actually pass through the entire amount. They do not differentiate between the charter schools and the neighborhood schools. So there is precedent for passing through more dollars. This would not be an original thing for PPS to do.
I hear you. I have a question about your academic achievement. So as you guys probably know, the district just started using MAPS last year as well, and before that didn't really have a great formative assessment tool. So you guys were there first, and so we can see your students have made some great gains, and that's one of the things that's great about that assessment tool, is that it's real-time information and it allows teachers to course correct and figure out, what are the gaps that any individual student is showing up with. So this is obviously one of the biggest goals of the district writ large right now. We've adopted 4 board goals, and each of them focuses pretty specifically on the achievement gap. And our metrics that we're using for our own board goals are really about the rate of acceleration for our students that are further behind, which tends to be our historically underserved students. So we're in the same business.
Yeah.
We've been seeing some good success using that. I mean, it's not the tool that provides the success, but the tool helps you, devise and revise your strategy. So that's a long way of asking you for a little insight into what strategies you think have really helped you accelerate your students' academic growth.
In relation to MAP, like in using that data, how has that data then informed some things that we've done?
Yeah. I mean, in really getting to proficiency in core subjects.
Yeah. So, as you may or may not know, the MAP has 4 strands. So you can very specifically look, for example, in literacy. You can look and see which is the strand that children are doing well or not. So one example at Kairos is we would do well on the language strand, on the vocabulary strand, we would do well in those, but we struggle to hold consistent our foundational skills strand, which is one of those things that often doesn't show up until children are in 3rd grade, and now they have to do fluency, and now they have to decode at a faster rate. And you can sort of do sight words for a long time, but there's a point at which you cannot. And so because we were tracking from kindergarten and watching for that to see if the strategies we were using in instruction were filling that hole, we were able to, in this last year, pretty much revamp the way that we're doing our foundational skills and phonics instruction in a targeted way, not because, again, we don't have a lot of money to work with. So this idea of adopting wholesale and expensive curriculum is pretty daunting for a small charter like us. However, if we have data from the MAP that says, hey, for the last 2 years, you've got foundational skills as something that we haven't met yet, find something that does that, then we're better able to and more equipped to be able to be targeted. So that's what we've done, and that's like a piece of what you're seeing in that kindergarten score is that we did that. We were able to put some FTE toward having somebody, amazing Lisa, in the room right now, maybe, to do the research, because it takes time and research to do the training. And now literally she's taking curriculum that would often only be available, Orton Gillingham is often only available in tutoring with very specific and usually expensive, tutors. And now we're what we call Kairosizing, right? So we're taking a look at what is the core elements, and then how do we apply culturally relevant strategies so we make sure that we're utilizing what we know about how brains work to make it more robust and doing it for every child as opposed to just waiting and doing it for the children who are behind. So that's one example of how that works.
Yep. Can I say something real quick? And this is more of a policy issue that I would implore the board to consider district-wide. I understand that you've implemented MAP, but starting in 3rd and 4th grade. And I just want to say one of the reasons why we started in kindergarten is because we saw that if children are not looked, if you don't assess where children are and you wait until 3rd grade, sometimes it's statistically impossible for them to get on track. Yeah. And so if we're serious, really as a district, about improving achievement gaps, we've got to start younger. And what's great about MAP is it's low stakes. It's not a high stakes assessment.
Right. And I think that's the methodology that the district's using. Just the goal we're measuring to sort of hold ourselves accountable is that 3rd grade reading and the 5th grade math. But we definitely are beginning that assessment and trying to do that work because we know kids won't be successful in 3rd and 5th grade if we don't start in kinder or even preschool.
Yeah.
Did you have a question?
I was going to ask, it was, you covered, I think, some of it answering Amy's question. So just looking pure academic results, and you clarify, I was going to ask strength, and pick a strength and talk about, pick a weakness and talk about, and you just talked about that foundational piece as, and believe me, we, on the PPS side in neighborhood schools, it's the same, it's the same discussion. But what's a strength that's working well? And you touched on it a little bit in terms of some of the reading strands.
Yeah.
So just talk about that.
So let's see. This is what I love to talk about, so I'm trying to be succinct. So in terms of, if we just stick with MAP, let's just stick with MAP for a minute, in terms of all the other things. So the language piece, so what we look at for a reader, right, is whether they have the skill piece of, do I know my phonics and do I know how they connect, right? And then we also look for, and do I know how to make meaning of what it is that I'm reading, right? And is that something that I feel confident and that belongs to me? And I think one of the things, not only within MAP, right, where we're seeing that comprehension piece and that understanding of language is strong for our kids, and then we're also seeing that translate into writing. So if you feel really confident in your language and you're a storyteller and you've got that sort of a book knowledge, then writing is an exercise that you belong to, right? You belong to that group of authors. And that's, for example, something that we have been able to do well over years. We've got different strategies that help that. One of them is materials. We do utilize a pedagogy that includes materials as a way to communicate those pieces of language. But I would say as one of those strands, language is one of those places that we do well with our children.
Yeah, to me, writing is, if a student can write, then that critical thinking is engaged. I mean, that's sort of, and that ownership of my words expressing all that works. So, cool.
One of the things that especially the upper grades work on, I just had a student came to me yesterday, like, guess how many words I wrote in my free write? Like, just all about it.
Yeah, exactly.
But that idea, right, that free write has joy attached to it, right? That idea of writing as joy, and that comes to our foundational belief around if you're having fun doing something, it sticks a whole lot better.
Well, whenever anybody in PPS talks about rigor, I always try to correct them and say rigorously supporting curiosity and joy of learning, and because rigor, not rigor mortis.
Right. To be clear.
And a second, completely from different direction, looking at the numbers in front. So, for example, if you had another, and I'm just pulling out a number, 1,000 per student, $240,000, roughly $250,000. Again, if you're like us, you've got a wish list like here, and the money's here. But what would be one or two? You talked about a couple of different things, but what would be one or two, your top three? And again, not to hold you to that, but what just top of mind?
I'll give one, you give one. How's that? Okay. So we have amazing educators who choose to be at Kairos, knowing that a piece of that choice means that they've made a decision that they're not going to get the market rate for what they could get for the same skills and the same training. And to Ms. Jessie's point, we're going to ask them to do some fairly audacious things, right? I want to pay our people. I want to be able, like with that foundation, to pay our people.
I echo that, and I think the other piece we've talked about is probably more specialized services around some of the academic components. So we've done a lot of work around the reading and writing, and so one of the areas that we've been talking about for next year is around math, and so specifically getting an instructor to support our anchor teachers around mathematics is probably a second thing.
I do have a question about the PIRS issue, which I think is maybe more of a staff question, unless I know, Kali, you've done some research into that. So why is it that, what is the justification that the state has given for assigning charters to that PIRS rate? And is it within the purview of the district itself to reorder that?
I wish. No, it is state statute. So I've asked that specific question to the PIRS office, and they said it's written into statute. That way, the statute would have to change for districts to authorize the PIRS rate within their own authorization. But the statute is the lever.
And is that a hill we want to try to charge?
I would love for you to charge it. It's so unfair.
Just, when we start rewriting statutes, sometimes things can go wonky. So I'm just curious about that. Okay.
Yeah, and we've had legislators say, yeah, it's not really fair, especially since you don't have as many teachers on PIRS. So to pay such a, all of our teachers are on PIRS. When I say that, I mean in terms of because we don't have as many teachers. Yeah. We are paying our PIRS.
I guess this might also be a bit for staff, but right now, so where do the enrollment designations come from? So your current enrollment ceiling right now is 244, and you're asking to bump it up by 11 students.
That comes from the original charter school application and then contract that follows with each renewal.
Oh, it's fair game in a renewal process to renegotiate. So that's why you're putting it forward.
Is board action required, or is that?
Yeah, that's part of the renewal.
Just part of the renewal.
Yeah,
Okay. Got it.
What was when you originally chartered, what was your student number? Do you remember all those years ago?
When we first started? When we first
Yeah.
started, how many kids we had?
Yeah, well, what did you ask for in your charter application?
244.
244 has been the whole time. I'm curious about only expanding 11 kids. Like, what is your long-term goal?
It's like 50 kids because you only have 204 now, right?
Right,
Yeah.
so it would bump the ceiling up.
I think, we're 6 years in, so we have a better sense of kind of how attrition's going for us. And so one of the things that we did is we built in a third kindergarten classroom for that attrition. We find, we talk about Kairos always being homegrown, and when we can start with them from kinder and raise them up, it just shifts the way that we can work with our kiddos. This year is going to be our first graduating class of kindergartners that actually started with us, which is really exciting. But I think we ideally don't really want to add in the upper grades if we don't have to. And so part of that is just the natural attrition that happens from kindergarten going through fifth. And so the way that we mapped it out, it's just around 255.
So how many non-kindergartners do you take in every year, roughly?
That's a good question.
About 4 to 5.
Yeah, it depends. So we hold space for SIBs, right? Because if you take in a kindergartner, it's nice to be able to take in a family. I would say the most we took in an upper grade was 7, and that was very unusual. It was because we have the classes that are at the very top are smaller because we had them at the very beginning, and so we did some adding, but between 3 and 5.
Okay, so not a huge number.
Not a huge number.
Okay.
I don't think I have any further questions. I just want to thank you guys for having slightly audacious requests or going a little bit out of bounds and pointing out some of the inequities of the structural system in which we're working here. So I appreciate that.
And do you have any other questions, Dr. Bailey?
I'm good. Just thank you all for coming and testifying. Appreciate it.
And I just want to say we got your report card and the student achievement data that you're showing, closing those gaps and how your students are increasing and performing is so beautiful to the work, like such a beautiful testament to the work you're doing, that it's working and that the students are feeling that security and love. So my last question for you is what are your significant goals for your students? So in 10 years, when you've had your 10-year renewal, you've gotten 95% of the pass through. This is again, we're in the realm of imagination here. What would be different for your students? What would Kairos look like? And what would your students be doing and able to be because of that?
Do I get to be queen of the world now?
Yeah, everybody can take a turn.
So we have a beautiful building that has space for everyone, including all of the incredible staff that work here. We have a counseling space, we have a reflection space, we have all of those pieces so that when there is a student need, we can early intervention. We don't have to do all of the things that we do now in terms of fitting multiple things into small spaces. So space is big. We want a student to come in, we want the student to be known, and we want to be able to meet them where they are. A big piece of what we're able to do is do that without stigma, do that with family partnership. We want to be able to do that extensively, right? And as soon as a teacher has a little like, I want to do it and take care of kids really early. So that's one thing. I think we want to have a really robust 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade by 10 years. Like right now, right, we've still just got one class of 5th grade. Like we're growing into that robustness. So we want to see that. We want to see, we have some big dreams about some athletic things happening at Kairos, right? Because we got some kids who want to be hoopers. So we want to do our, have that extracurricular piece of things also, so that we can do things like chess club and have that be sustainable, do things like basketball, have those things be sustained and sustainable. And for our kids, like I really want our kids to, to be confident in the skin that they're in and the skills that they know, to be able to use their voice. I want them to have done enough work over the course of their time there that they have self-regulation and can make choices rather than simply reactions when they move into the world. I want them to be creative. I want them to have multiple opportunities to try out passions, try out materials. We want to have space to be able to do that. And we want them to be compassionate. That's why it's in our mission. Like we want them to be connected and practice empathy and have that be an act of courage for them as they go out into the world.
I have one more question.
I would live in that world. If you were the queen, I'm signing up for your kingdom. Amy?
I want to add on to that question. So, Khalid, to your point about partnership, show me what that looks like in terms of Kairos being able to have more influence on the larger system and PPS showing up in your eyes as a better partner.
Wow.
Now I get to be queen. we want everybody to get to be queen.
If only we had more queens in our in our own country. I think there's a lot of practices that. Can you hear me? I think there's a lot of practices that we do well. The protocols that we use around self-reflection, I think, could be employed in many schools. I think we don't interrupt, as Zalika said, unconscious, subconscious bias unless we're intentional about it. And what we know about how the brain works, to create new schema around the way you do things, you have to do them repeatedly, over and over again, or else you always default to what you know. And right now, the known schema is detrimental to kids. And so we have to be proactive in looking at practices, and I think Kairos has many. Self-reflective protocol is one of many. What's important about the self-reflection is you don't even know what you're doing if you don't take the time to stop and reflect on it, and of course, correct. So I think that is a big thing. I think I would like to see children spending time with other students in other schools, and there's a lot we do around kindness and caring and empathy, the social emotional skills that I think is brilliant. I'd like to see collaboration with middle schools so that, and we've talked about that, so Kairos children could feed into a middle school, that we have a really strong collaboration with the middle school, and that they can, my vision is to really have a Center for Black Excellence in Education here in the Albina community. And I think that Kairos can be part of creating that. I'd like to see a whole continuum starting with early childhood all the way to high school, to Jefferson High. And let's figure out how we do that in a very intentional way here.
Thank you so much to Kairos for coming out tonight and for all your supporters. We are going to take a 5-minute stretch break, so I'm going to invite folks to stand up, to get your wiggles out, to use the restroom, to get a sip of water before we hear from Portland Village School, and I will be setting my timer and starting back right at 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for coming out.